Okay, this is a real treat for me as a lifelong Civil War student living in Florida. I don't get to visit very many genuine Civil War sites. I live in what they call the Tampa Bay area. It's much further south than where we are right now, which is North Florida. We're very close to the border. We're about 40 miles excuse me, west of Jacksonville. We are at Olustee Battlefield Historic State Park. This is for purposes of identification and classification, etc. Civil War historians have agreed on a list, an index, if you will, of classifications regarding various things with respect to the Civil War. One of them is battle and battlefield classifications. Long story short, there are major battles, and there's a bunch of other battles behind those, skirmishes, etc. And there's probably, I don't know, 20, 15, 18, 20, 30 major battles that were fought in the Civil War. Gettysburg, Sharpsburg, etc. This is a major. This is classified as a major. In fact, it's the only major in the state of Florida. And that makes it really cool. The fact that the battle was actually fought here makes it really cool. This is, for me, this is an amazing thing. I've been to all the other major fields and many minor fields throughout the Civil War over the years, some of them many times over. I've only been to this field 3 times, but it's probably been a good 20-some years since I've been here. It hasn't changed a bit. I noticed a cemetery over there that I hadn't noticed before, but other than that, it's remained the same, unchanged. The Federals landed to begin their invasion of the south of North Florida, I should say, in late or early 1864, occupied Jacksonville. And they wanted, their initial goal was to cut across the railroad, which is right behind us, and cut off the railroad across the Swanee, burn the bridge, and capture Tallahassee. Tallahassee was the only Confederate capital during the war that never capitulated. It was never conquered or captured. And at the point after this battle, after Lee had begun, or Grant had begun the siege of Lee at Petersburg in May, June of that same year, it became redundant. It was just a matter of time. It was as if Grant had 3 queens and all Lee had was a few pawns. He could hold them off for a few minutes, but at the end of the day, it was a foregone conclusion that that's how it was going to end. More money, more men, more material, more everything. And just maneuver him into a corner where he had no choice but to either resort to guerrilla warfare or capitulate. Lee capitulated. At that point, the whole thing was over. It lasted about another month before all the field armies surrendered. And eventually the capital of Tallahassee was occupied by federal troops. The federal armies came from the west. Came from the east, came from Jacksonville, heading towards the west, and were met here on this field by the Confederates. It was roughly 6,000 Union, 5,000 Confederates. Confederates had assembled in Lake City, heard that, through intelligence, found out that the Federals were moving this way, excuse me, and came out to meet them. There were entrenchments, earthworks thrown up along Ocean Pond, which is not very far from us here. The town of Olustee is about 3 miles west. We're basically throw a football from here in 90, and Highway 90 is right behind us. The railroad is there as well, the old railroad bed. And, of course, the rails have been replaced and updated, but that is where the railroad ran. The trains ran on that railroad. There are 3 monuments here, and this makes this unique also in my experience for major battlefields, is that there are relatively few monuments. There's an old cemetery over here where the Federals, 2 years after the battle, came and buried the skeletal remains of their fallen comrades. And that, other than that, that cemetery, it's a fairly new cemetery, but that is where they buried their dead. And then we have three monuments behind me. We have the main monument, Confederate Memorial. We have the Colquitt Monument and the Finnegan Monument. Those were officers during the battle. We have an old school, old time, excuse me, visitor center, for lack of a better term. They have plans to build a new one, but this one's been here for many, many, many years, and it's very, very cool. It's very cool in its old schoolness, quaintness. So we're going to go take a look at that. The battlefield is over here. We're going to just show that briefly. There aren't really any geographical features to delineate the battlefield, one part of it from another. If you've ever been to Gettysburg or seen videos on it, you know you have all sorts of rock formations, Little Round Top, Big Round Top, Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, on and on and on, and Vicksburg and Sharpsburg and everything. All the other fields that I've ever been to have pronounced geographic features. This one does not. This has the railroad. Basically, your railroad's on the south side of the battlefield, and boom, the battlefield's over here. So, with that being said, that makes it unique. But we're not going to go throughout the entire battlefield. It's basically at the time of the battle, it was the scrub wasn't there. There were some pine trees, but there wasn't very much undergrowth. Now there's a huge amount of undergrowth. You couldn't walk through there. You wouldn't want to safely try to walk through there because of the snakes and everything else. I actually walked through there a little bit ago and saw a deer bound through there. I didn't see any snakes, but there's all kind of stuff, I'm sure, in there. This was also, Olustee was also a railroad stop, a rail station. So there would have been people living here. Railroads in those days used wood burning boilers to boil their steam and get their engines moving. So this would have been completely deforested for either side of the rail, of the tracks, for miles and miles and miles. I mean, there might have been a tree here and a tree there, but for the most part, you know, a guy's not going to go 10 miles into the forest to grab some wood for his boiler. He's going to grab the nearest tree. So as you do that progressively, you keep grabbing trees and moving the forest back. And that's what they did here. So this ground was essentially cleared compared to what it is now. So we're going to look at the monuments, and then we're going to go inside and take a look at the visitor center, and we'll walk over and see the kiosk in front of the battlefield. But we're not going to go through the entire battlefield because it's just, you know, pine scrub. There's some interpretive markers there and that sort of thing, but isn't really anything to hold anyone's interest over a long period of time. So, and they've got a couple of cool Napoleons here too that they, for some reason, are painted black. I guess because left in their original brass condition, they would go green in a matter of days and probably completely rust out. So I'm guessing that's why they did that. Anyway, we're gonna check it out. There we go. Trying to go slowly. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Oh good, the people that were there are gone. They're gone. All right, we have the monument there. Here's another monument that, because it has a Confederate flag on it, a battle flag, which is for some reason considered unacceptable nowadays by the revisionists. This will eventually be removed. I don't know if it'll be removed when they do the new visitor center. There's plans for a new visitor center. We'll take a look at that when we go over that way. Okay, that's better. Kind of interrupt the overallness of the video, but is what it is, as they say. So this monument is over 100 years old. I don't know when these Napoleons were placed here, but they were here the last time. This is a monument to Alfred Colquitt. He was a general here. He was not the commanding general, but he was a general here. This is erected in 1936. It says, but Alfred Colquitt fought at Gettysburg, among other places, but he was a colonel in Gettysburg, I believe, if memory serves. And this is interesting to me. It says, here was fought the battle under immediate command of Colquitt, hero of Olustee. This decisive engagement prevented a Sherman-like invasion of Georgia from the south. So the Sherman campaign, the March to the Sea, the so-called March to the Sea, in which he burned everyone's homes and factories, began in North Georgia and ended in essentially, a straight line. And then moved up into South Carolina and North Carolina. But he started in Atlanta, moved south a little ways, and then, basically a straight line across the state. So all along the southern part of the state of Georgia, it was pretty much left undone, untouched. And if they would have won here, then they could have done the same thing here, because this was ultimately under the auspices of Sherman, and he had no mercy for anybody. And this is a monument to Joseph Finnegan. Hopefully later today or tomorrow we're going to go visit his gravesite. He's interred in Jacksonville in a different cemetery from John Dickinson, who's also interred there as well. The Battle of Olustee was fought on this ground, etc., etc., etc. And there it is. What causes everybody to lose their minds? Try to rewrite history. Anyway. And this is the other side. This is my favorite part. To the men who fought and triumphed here in defense of their homes and firesides, this monument is erected by the UDC, etc., devoted in commemoration of their devotion to the cause of liberty and state sovereignty. Pretty well sums it up. The revisionists would have you believe otherwise, but simply isn't the case. Somebody's attacking your home, somebody's invading your homeland. What man does not defend his home? Who is worth being a man? We're going to go into the visitor center. We go in the other way. Go in the front. I'm going to drop this thing off. It's cumbersome. All right, we're going to first go over here and see the new visitor center and exhibits coming soon. So I imagine at that point, the existing monument, which is there, they'll probably replace that or sandblast the flags and any reference to the Confederacy off of it. Who knows? Maybe they'll rework it all together and make it a monument to Grant or Lincoln. Who knows? I mean, while we're rewriting history, let's not stop halfway. Okay, so we're going to go into the little teeny tiny visitor center. Very quaint, very old, very cool. Some break from the sun. Yeah. Okay. Got some real artifacts. Yeah, it should be said also that even though Tallahassee never fell, Fort Pickens never surrendered either. It remained in federal control throughout the entire war. They didn't do anything. I mean, they just stayed there. The Confederacy had no navy to speak of, so certainly not to go on the offensive. So they just stayed there. They were supplied throughout the war, but they couldn't do anything. There were the approaches to that area were very heavily defended, and it was a good little ways from Pensacola to Tallahassee. But if they would have gotten on land to be able to, in any kind of force, and been able to force a beachhead, they would have been able to march on Tallahassee. As it was, there were skirmishes around there. You can see how small this visitor center / museum is, but it's still compelling. I mean, anytime you're seeing any of these things, you're seeing original things. I mean, we've seen a lot of these over the years.
Norton will write 2 books on his experiences in the Civil War. He joined the 8th on November 10th, 1863. His recollections of Olustee provide a unique perspective on the role.
And here we find, I don't know where they found this old-time early Confederate flag. It's not a battle flag, so I guess nobody's going to come in and rip it down or anything. But there's only 7 stars on it, so that's one of the original Alabama Convention flags. That would have been one of the first flags they adopted, and that is an original flag. Absolutely not a reproduction. All right, we're going to head out over here. Quick look at the kiosk surrounding the battlefield, or in front of the battlefield. Trying not to move too fast. And this ground right here would have been part of the battlefield. There would have been guys standing around here shooting, just the same as over there. It's not like it was off, way off in the distance. It was right here. This would have been where some officers would have been standing and directing. Officers were under fire, but officers did not fight in the sense that we know officers now to fight. A lieutenant, captain, colonel, lieutenant colonel in today's army would be right next to his sergeants and his privates, busting through a door. I mean, he'd be directing it, but he would be on the site firing. The officers in the Civil War would sit on horses and direct things to couriers and observe the field and what was transpiring on the field at the time. This is cool. I saw this earlier. I really like this. This shows the battlefield as it was then, but interposed with some things that are here now. The fence is here, the monument, museum, the Ranger's house, cemetery, Union Monument, which that's actually in the cemetery, the fire tower, US 90, etc. And the trail, this little trail here that has the various interpretive markers on it, and the troops back then. And it also shows the landscape as it would have been. I like this very much, this map very much. Gives you a real sense of what was going on in relation to what's here now. Here, this talks about various chain of command, and the map. I'm going to go back and look at that map again. And this just talks about the battle itself. And this map is very interesting. We were at Fernandina not too long ago, and we know that this train track ran all the way down through Cedar Key. That was the first train track in the state. David Levy Yulee, his company built that. This goes from Jacksonville. This is the one right out in front of us now. down through Olustee, Lake City, Madison, over to Tallahassee. It doesn't show up, but it actually goes beyond Tallahassee. So that gives you a really good view of an idea. That's North Florida. That was the most populated part of Florida. Oddly enough, then it was more populated now than the part where we're from. It was horrible back then. It says here that Barber's Plantation is near present-day McClenny. That's interesting. Headed there next. So without going all the way into it, we're just going to, take a quick look. This is the field. We got pine trees and palmetto scrub. That's it. They hold a reenactment here every year on the second weekend of February. The battle took place February 20th. I've been to one of those. I'd like to come to another one someday. The Battle of Olustee is notable currently more notable for this than it was back in the day, but the 54th Massachusetts USCT, United States Colored Troops, served here on this field in defense of the Union. The movie Glory, a lot of the battle scenes that you see coming from the forest were filmed during the reenactment that takes place here. So they used real reenactors and they got a lot of their battlefield footage from here, which is really cool too. So anyway, we're going to shut this down and head off to the next stop. It's been crazy cool as always.